Good day to everyone, wherever you are situated.
Working?
It's a pleasure and honor to be giving the first talk of the 2022 SSIG meeting. My talk is going to be about the Sahel's rangelands, pressures on them, risks and opportunities that they are afforded. And in this talk, I'm going to start off with a very large scale, the arid grasslands across Africa from the Horn of Africa to Mauritania, and look at the issues affecting their country's stability and the well-being of their citizens. My perspective is as an outsider. I am now an armchair conservationist sitting outside Africa, but have a keen interest as a board member of SaharaConservation. But I hasten to add that any views here are mine and not those of SaharaConservation. From the broadest picture, I will look at rangeland health and degradation and at the human demographic structure of Chad as an example. I will then try to link up the threats and pressures into an integrated vision for opportunity in the Sahel's rangelands, restoring ecosystem productivity while offering meaningful employment to a young population. As I say, it is a vision, and I may be criticized for being naive, but despite the size and apparent emptiness of the Sahel rangelands, there is no time to lose for their active and effective management and conservation. And I hope that my perspective will provide some context for the talks that we will hear over these 3 days. In the broadest sense, the Sahel is a band of arid land stretching from the Red Sea to the Atlantic. Many maps of the area are labelled a geopolitical hotspot, and it is hard to dispute this. Using many sources, all reputable, I have gathered identifiable risks and threats to the political and civil security of the Sahel's human populations into several categories. I'm not identifying where they take place, nor what causes them. For me, here and now, they are simply observable realities. The region is seeing major challenges to democratic governance and some radically changing relationships with the outside world. And within, there are multiple sources of tension or conflict. As a result, civil society is under stress from issues of personal safety and threats to communities and livelihoods. And these hazards are often due to competition for resources, illegal extraction, or extreme natural events. Let us now look at climate and rainfall, because rainfall, whether in total or distributed through the year, is critical for human occupation and activities. The past is now well understood. Total rainfall has partially recovered from the droughts of the 1970s and 80s, albeit not to the levels of the 40s and 50s. These droughts were caused by anthropogenic aerosol forcing and changes in sea surface temperatures. Recovery is due to higher levels of greenhouse gases with lesser roles for aerosol precursors, and sea surface temperatures are no longer important. There is a presumed positive effect of vegetation cover through increasing agriculture, causing a positive feedback between vegetation and monsoon rainfall in the Sahel. Further projections of Sahel rainfall are highly uncertain if sea surface temperatures are irrelevant. The factors determining the strength and behavior of the East Atlantic's easterly jet stream are increasingly subject to global and more distant forces. It may be that warming of the Mediterranean Sea will become more important as observed warming in the Sahara draws in the easterly Atlantic jet stream. The Mediterranean area is warming faster than any other part of the world, partly through being enclosed by 3 continental landmasses. While it is hard to be conclusive over the future rainfall in the Sahel, 2 points are likely. First, projections of rainfall in response to global warming diverge greatly, but paleoecological records show that Sahel rainfall can exhibit abrupt transition in response to gradual forcing. Many models of rainfall show very significant rainfall increases in the 21st century due to the northward expansion of the monsoon. Second, it is well documented that the intensity of Sahel storms in the narrow band south of the Sahara has increased. This observation is only weakly linked to the recovery of rainfall, but is highly correlated with global land temperatures. Temperatures in the south have not increased, but the Sahara is warming from anthropogenic influences. The gradient between the two will increase through this century, resulting in a marked increase in extreme rainfall. Whatever the trend and detail, climate will remain a major determinant of the Sahel's capacity to support human occupation and livelihoods. Let's now look at land degradation, which is a global problem, especially in arid areas, and this map shows what is going on in the Sahel. We are now in the UN's decade of ecosystem restoration. The importance and urgency for dry land restoration is emphasized by Ibrahim Thiaw of the UN Convention to Combat Desertification, and who spoke to us in 2021. He had this to say earlier this year. It is necessary to act decisively to reverse and recover what we have lost. Restoration also prepares us for an uncertain future. Regenerating our land resources provides multiple benefits for people, climate, and nature in the form of improved food security and human health, meaningful green jobs and drought resilience, to name just a few. And the southern zone of the Sahel, which is relatively well treed and cultivated, has received enormous attention for restoration with dramatic effects. But little has been attempted in the northern rangelands of common access pastoralism. Livestock raising here is a major economic activity, and for every person in Chad, there are over 5 cows. It is subject to many pressures as nomadic pastoralists are joined by large herds with distant owners contracting out the care and management of their capital assets, and I presented on this at SSIG in 2018. As the huge and expanding herds are pushing into grasslands that are beyond reach of current water supplies, there is pressure for further water development. And at a local level, it is quite evident in central Chad that well development leads to loss of vegetation in a vast surrounding area. Vegetation loss is then compounded by loss of soil through wind erosion. Therefore, is it time that governments and development agencies insist that water development is accompanied by holistic environmental impact assessment and planning? Well development in pristine rangelands could be accompanied by surrounding grazing management, zonation, seasonal access, no-go areas, fencing, reseeding, tree planting, water harvesting. But where degradation has proceeded to damage the soil structure, then mechanical work may be needed rather than just management of grazing pressure. This will be expensive and difficult to implement and enforce, but must be worth trying, given the trend for further ecosystem degradation and impact on human livelihoods. Resources for this should be found on the basis of compatibility with the decade of ecosystem restoration and the Sustainable Development Goals. Now let me take a quick look at human demography. Human population numbers are often and casually said to be the cause of land degradation. Whether causation or not, some data from Chad and Niger indicate the potential impact of fast-growing populations. Chad now has some 17 million citizens and is growing at 3.01% per year, perhaps the 9th highest in the world. This is reflected in the age structure. In Chad in 2019, 45% of its people were under 15 years old. In Niger, the comparable figure is 50%. The implications of this are great, and I'll use Italy as a comparison. A country where the total population is declining, the proportion under 15 is just 13%. This is reflected in the average number of births between Chad and Italy. Whereas Chad's population is growing by 3.01% per year, that of Italy is decreasing by 0.15% per year, the fastest in the world. Urbanization through rural emigration is a major issue in many African countries. In contrast, in Chad in 2020, 23.5% of the population lived in cities, showing only a small increase over the previous 10 years, and hence the population remains predominantly rural. So can we link up all these observations now into a vision for the Sahel rangelands? These rangelands face problems on political, religious and civil security lines, as well as issues around land degradation and growing human populations, and a changing climate, which may not be wholly adverse. Can these threats be countered before severe and possibly irreversible ecosystem productivity and resilience are lost? what are the opportunities for this situation? The answer, like everywhere, must lie with the people, the guardians and knowledge base in any country, for they have the greatest incentives to conserve local resources, their communities and way of life. Sahelian countries are very large, and their capitals are for the most part at the edges, so that their most distant lands are very far away. Hence, governments may seem remote, and they are very stretched to provide services to their most distant citizens. Given the age structure of young, this offers little prospect for education, employment, and so on. Hence, it is not surprising that such communities are ripe for radicalization and extremism, given even a low level of inducement. So can all this be tackled? Now I come down to the most local level. SaharaConservation is running a world-class conservation project in Chad's Wadi Rimeh, Wadi Achib Nature Reserve, centering on the reintroduction of the scimitar-horned oryx and addax antelope and the red-necked ostrich, with further conservation research and action based on other key ecosystem species, such as the local Dama and Dorcas gazelles, bustards, and vultures. This is rewilding with the purpose, as Ibrahim Thiaw says is needed, of regenerating our land resources for multiple benefits. From initial and continuing support of the Environment Agency of Abu Dhabi and subsequently the European Union and presently the World Bank, the project is extending its reach from species reintroduction to zonation and management of the existing reserve to be progressively implemented over the coming years. For this to be successful, the project depends on good relations with local pastoral populations, as well as provincial and central government bodies. Can we tie all this up to a bigger picture and a model for potential replication across the Sahel? Reintroducing large mammals of outstanding conservation value is worthy, but can this and effective conservation of their habitats become a means for restoration of the productivity of the grasslands? This does not mean large areas with no livestock, for the Sahelian grasslands have evolved in the presence of large grazers, albeit wild rather than domestic. Despite the huge scale of the Sahel's rangelands, an integrated approach to land zoning and management must be timely. An integrated approach should involve the means of supporting the local people with education, health facilities, and above all, employment opportunities for the large pool of young. If they are not offered opportunities for self-improvement, they will too easily fall susceptible to radical or dangerous outside influences, causing problems for governments and further afield. The Sahara Conservation Project offers the potential to do this. Its perspective is evolving from species reintroduction to area-based landscape conservation. Achieving this would mean that the species conservation work becomes a tool, the means for achieving objectives for the rangelands, rather than being an end in itself. At local, national and regional levels, the employment possibilities through rangeland restoration and conservation could mitigate many of the problems for the Sahel that I listed at the start. This, surely, is a measure of effective conservation today, landscapes in which both people and wildlife species learn to live amongst one another for common benefit. Thank you very much for watching, and I don't doubt there will be questions and challenges.